Welcome, welcome, Anastasia. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Denisa. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
Well, it's an honor to meet you. You have some incredible projects you're creating. Let's dive into your journey. What brought you to work with water and to sustainability and with the UN? Let's just tell your story a bit.
Yeah, sure. This is never easy because I think, I guess my story starts in a country that has a lot of water, which is where I grew up in Canada. So there was always an abundance of water here. But that didn't mean that there weren't issues in that space. And I got to, learn about those a bit deeper when I had my first real role in the environmental space and in the policy sector. So we were actually focused on water policy at both the provincial and national levels. And we were really looking at, how we're building these magnificent cities, these centers of action and innovation, and what are we doing with the most basic part of our environment, which is water? How are we incorporating that into our cities? And the answer most of the time was we just weren't. We weren't thinking about that at all. So the projects that I was working on were really looking at green and blue infrastructure and green living cities and these really futurist type of ideas of how we should be building our urban centers at a policy level. So that like really regulatory piece. And so I did that for about a year. And then I'm always doing, this is like a personal thing. I'm always doing a few too many things at once, I believe, probably.
A Renaissance woman.
Yeah. So at the time I was working with a close friend who is the founder of an amazing clean tech startup out west in Calgary. Mm-hmm. And I had joined the team, and we were finalists in the XPRIZE, which is this global competition for really forward-thinking ideas. And so it was
that's Peter's prize, yeah? Peter Diamandis.
That's right. Yeah. So Peter created this prize. He pioneered it. I had no idea who Peter Diamandis was, what that whole futurist community that it existed or what it was about. All I knew was that we got an email to our clean tech team to, they're like, oh, are you interested in going to California for a few months? Nobody else in our team can go. Everyone's in the lab. You're the only one who could be kind of mobile. And I was, I guess. So that was the beginning of the journey. And this was a year ago today, actually, was the day that I moved to California. So as we were chatting before, we went there to a place called Singularity University, which we've now learned is one of the hearts of, the futurist movement. It's, we were really immersed in this whole world at the heart of Silicon Valley that was thinking, 200 years out and reeling it into today. So it was in that context, living, breathing, working with 90 other amazing entrepreneurs from like 50 countries at NASA, which is, like living by an airstrip. It was really crazy. So we were living all together, doing this program. And this was where I met Beth and Claire. So Claire is from Britain and Beth is Kenyan. And we sort of came together throughout the program with this shared vision for decentralized and democratized water. So the spark of that was Beth having this really deep knowledge of the Kenyan water space because she had ran a very successful water filtration company there for 5 years. Mm-hmm. She quickly realized that even really advanced water filtration didn't work when there wasn't any water to filter. So she had heard that we were working on dew harvesting in my background, and she's saying, we started talking, is there a way to do this in places where it's really dry? And we didn't know. We were just like, okay, let's look into it. So we started looking into that, and found that there is ways to do that. There just hasn't been anything created that could ever conceivably work in Kenya. And that was, the birth of our love child startup of let's make this happen, let's make it work.
These are the girls. I just screen shared them. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So that's us. Very a team from 3 continents.
So the 3 of you met at Singularity University at that summer event, or what would you have called that program?
Yeah, so it's the Global Solutions Program. It's the flagship program of Singularity University. It is what we were told. It's highly competitive, so we were very grateful we were able to participate because it's people from around the world want to attend. So it's 3 months, and then we stayed on for another month and a half to do the Singularity University Incubator Program, which basically helps you take your crazy idea, your moonshot, your exponential startup idea, and then you validate it, and you check yourself that what you're wanting to do is legitimate. And so the incubator really helped us with that due diligence, and we walked away feeling confident that what we were pursuing was feasible, if a bit ambitious.
And this idea of working together kind of was born out of a certain group experience, or how did you connect around water?
I think Beth was really the leader in that. So Beth had come with a vision. She knew what she was doing. She was trying to solve a massive problem, and she was. The problem of both water scarcity, in that there's lack of actual water available, and water contamination. So she's a powerhouse on her own, and she had that vision that we saw an opportunity to support her in. So I think that, and she's our CEO, and she's the one who carries our specific objective in Kenya is really her spearheading, if that makes sense.
Yes, she's on the ground there. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we all are. I've been remote for some, just for a few different reasons, but our whole team is there. We have 2 interns that we've came into our lives, as we like to say, for the summer. And we also work with the local engineering and product firm in Nairobi. We have an office in Nairobi, so everyone is there.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, so you got this idea together, and then just tell us very briefly around the journey of actually creating the Majik Water, creating the actual technological piece of it.
Yeah, definitely. So we followed a fairly traditional hardware development route. While we were still in California, we put together a proof of concept. So that's something that's proving the fundamental technology works. So we used existing hardware, and we linked it together to show that what we were talking about works. So we connected a solar panel array, a desiccant dehumidification system, and a handmade activated carbon filter. And we demoed this in front of a bunch of VCs and people in California before we left. Once we were in Kenya and our team was establishing there after we left Silicon Valley, we moved on to our next real stage, which was developing our original prototype. So we had a pretty strict deadline for that. It was in May. We were supposed to be on stage at the ASME iShow, which is this, it's a showcase run by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. So we knew we had to get something together by the 8th of May. So we pushed for that, and we put together an original prototype to our own spec that was built and assembled locally in Kenya. So that was our second, you can call it our dark horse prototype or our concept prototype. And and that's kind of where we've reached in 7 months for the tech development. And we have big plans for the future.
Well, let's dive into that. Let me show the video so we have that as a part of,
sure.
and this way it'll create a really beautiful context of what you amazing women are designing together.
Yeah, so you'll see the first the proof of concept in this video, and yeah, our team, our where we were. So yeah, so I guess as this is playing, we're at a really interesting intersection as a team. We are at the intersection of impact and hardware. Most of the time, people are very hesitant to do or advocate for hardware anyway. I'm not sure if this is something you've come across in the futurist societies, but hardware is the kind of forgotten cousin of innovation. Data is sexy. All these things are get all the headlines, but at the end of the day, we can't drink data, right? We're biological beings, and we need things that are still very tied to the basic elements of our planet, of nature, of our Earth. So we recognize this challenge and what was ahead of us, and we don't really care, to be honest. We're still going to try to do it because we think it's important. So that why I'm saying that is because the next steps for us are quite complex. Bringing something that you created as a prototype to being manufactured can take upwards of 18 to 24 months. And while we're pushing for that now, in the real moment, we're iterating on our design in the workshop every day. We're also looking at other ways to get to market quicker. And one of those ways is our in-market pilot that we're doing in the coming 2 months. So I think that's a good snapshot of where we came from, where we are, and where we're headed.
Very exciting. So at this point, how is this being funded? Do you have sponsors? What's going on at this point?
Yeah, so it's a tricky question and tricky answer. So we are self-funded. We're bootstrapping as entrepreneurs. We've received just short of $30,000 in the last 6 months from prizes, grants that we've won. However, we're trying to we're working to validate or to figure out what the best capital mix for us is as a hardware impact focused startup. And it might not be the same financing strategy that many startups use, which is the VC route. That being said, we have a few funding opportunities in the pipeline that, if they come through, would really help with our next year's budget. We've also been in early conversations with various types of investors, both in Israel, where we're doing an accelerator, and elsewhere. And of course, what the catalyst for our call today, there's definitely a lot of value for us from this competition that we're a part of. Both financially, it would go towards all of our current efforts and getting this tech on the ground, and also in terms of partnership. So the UN is a powerful, powerful organization with links to a lot of the entities that we are already, in discussion with or trying to find a way to work together with. So this is really another one of those opportunities that we're hoping will come through for us.
Very exciting. So just before we get into your UN Champions of the Earth competition, so you're a young woman, you could be getting fantastic jobs at any kind of environmentalist firm and so on, but you are sticking with this entrepreneurial journey. What is your why in this? What's that fire in you that's keeping you on this particular path right now? Because, things might change, but right now you have this passion. I'm interested in just like what's in that passion for you.
Yeah, I really love this question because I think about it a lot, and the answer always changes. For me, it's split up into two. So the why is a people why and a problem why. The problem why is I don't need to explain it too much. Water tables are dropping, aquifers are drying up.
Mm-hmm.
The world is going to be increasingly in a frantic search for sources of clean drinking water. Why do we not use the technology that we know is available to us to create a new source of clean drinking water? It's I feel like we're the early adopters of our thinking here. We're jumping on the tail of something that makes sense. This is following in the steps of decentralized energy. People didn't believe solar panels were ever going to substitute incumbent energy sources. And it's an easy Google search to see why that is not the case now, right? On the personal level, to be honest, it's something I think for me, it's tied a lot to an element of justice. There's a beautiful quote from a woman at the Oxford Africa Conference where we were at a few weeks ago. And I'll get you her name after this. But she said, who feeds you controls you. And on a bigger level, what that means is, water is a source of life, and where you're getting that from is very tied to your autonomy as an individual, your power as a person, right? So why, there's places right now where people don't have access to that. And it's not just in the sub-Saharan African countries of the world. It's in California, it's in South Africa, it's everywhere. So that's kind of the ideological driver. And in terms of opportunity cost, I'd rather be working on this now and giving my best shot than look back and say, I could have tried to do this. I just turned 24 yesterday, oh my God. So I think I still have years ahead of me to do other things, but right now this beautiful opportunity is in our hands, and why not give it our all? I think it's important to remember that, because there's always going to be better things that you think you could be doing, but if you never commit to one thing that you actually want to try, then you're going to be left with fragments of experiences. So
That's fantastic. I want to just take a little break, and I'm just going to run the video so that our viewers can experience actually what you're creating.
There's 6 times more water in the atmosphere than there is in all of the rivers in the world combined. But there are some places in the world where there's very little water on the ground or anywhere. Places like Kenya. And the UN predicts that by 2025, almost 2 billion people are going to be living without access to clean drinking water. That could be you. My name is Anastasia Kaschenko, and I'm co-founder of Majik Water. We harvest clean drinking water from the air. We use water-loving materials that absorb water from the atmosphere and release it when heated. We've created a device that is powered by the sun and works off-grid, and we're starting in Kenya.
Fantastic. So this is an incredible, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking for California alone, when you said this could be you, this Californians alone should be paying high level of attention to using this kind of technology in their homes. And what do you think?
Yes. So the thing is to be very clear, getting water from the atmosphere is something that's been done for thousands of years, actually. Mm-hmm. Indigenous folks have made use of various flora in the forests where they live to collect water from the humidity. And in the past years, in terms of technology, there's been companies who have created very powerful devices in places like the US that are doing this as well. So someone in California can actually, purchase one of these things. However, they are very costly, and so that makes them prohibitively expensive for the majority of people. So we're talking upwards of $5,000, we're talking upwards of $20,000 for various devices. So what we're trying to do is close that gap between that, upmarket sort of very high-tech device and something that is not only affordable to the US, but is actually affordable and feasible in Kenya. So that's the major distinction. The second one is that if people in the US are looking into it now, most of the tech that's on the market is condensation based, which means it works in high humidity in places like Florida, where it's very humid. It requires a lot of energy. And as I said before, it's expensive. And so they don't use, our fundamental tech is very different. We are trying to optimize to be solar powered, both thermally and PV. And we're using materials that absorb water. Like that's the word that they're called desiccants. We try to, I know it's like a weird word, it's a bit here, but best way we explain it is if you buy a new pair of shoes or a bag and you get a little packet of clear balls in there, they're keeping the shoes dry, that's a type of desiccant. But we're using a similar material not to keep shoes dry, but to absorb moisture and then release it as drinking water. So at the heart of our technology, we're different from what's available, and we're targeting a very different purpose. I think that was like a wayward answer to your question, but that's just to say that if you're in the States, you're looking for this technology, you will see things that are available to you. If you can afford it, that's fantastic. Get yourself off the water grid, be independent. If you can't afford it, support the AWG, the atmospheric water generation industry, so that we can get to a place where the price point is accessible for people.
Absolutely, makes sense. You'd be surprised, folks don't have an extra $5,000 to spend on water desiccation. I mean, the US, US families are also struggling financially. But in Kenya at this moment, what are you seeing? What kind of an impact is this going to make if you win this prize, or is that it's a competition? You get funding for the project to go ahead. What will happen from there on?
The UN prize for us has a very clear payout. This money is going to go to support us in deploying our pilot on the ground. So we are in an early partnership with a fantastic NGO that's been operating in Kenya for over a decade, and they work out of a children's home there. And these are children that have been raised. They've been raised in this home independently. And they are looking for alternative sources of income to fund their university and their secondary studies. So we want to do a water selling pilot where we set up a water kiosk, and some of these young adults and these children will, or the young adults will be the ones working in the kiosk, but it will benefit the whole children's home. So we're very fortunate that this partner has an interest in working with us. And what it will do for us is validate the willingness to pay of our customer. It will validate our business model. It will get water into the hands of real users. And this is a critical step for us, not only to get investment to really continue our project, but to really break ground in Kenya with a real user base. So this funding for us will be quite transformational, and that's not even talking about the partnership opportunity with the UN.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, great. My question is, are you going to have folks like myself or my colleagues, or, I have some folks who do like to support really great causes around the world. Will you have another series of funding opportunities down the road?
I mean, traditional funding is always a tricky thing. We know it takes about 6 to 12 months to secure your first round. Where there's a few things that we are hoping will pull through for our first bit of seed funding. But if people are interested in working with us directly as supporters, just please get in contact with us. We've had a lot of people with that similar interest, and we just love connecting with you regardless of the outcome. So, you can reach me directly. Our contact details are on the website. It's anastasia@majikwater.co. And please just reach out. We'll have a lot to learn from you in either case. And if there's also discussion around funding, we can also have that conversation as well.
When is the voting going until for the Young Champions of the Earth?
So we were told it's until the 25th of June. So
okay.
7 days away until it closes.
Everyone, please drop in. It takes truly 45 seconds. I did it, and it was painless.
Thank you so much, Denise.
And let's support this amazing group of women creating a beautiful, beautiful project in the world. Now, I really want to drop into this question. So my interest for women in the world is really supporting them as we're designing for our significance, our impact, and our bliss in the world. And that's kind of my angle on this whole journey. You're coming in from a global design perspective, which is also so juicy and beautiful. I'm really interested in women having a dialogue, have a place, a voice in the future's dialogue. What are you seeing with women, young women your age, and are you collaborating with the Gen X women or the professionals that are in their 60s and so on? And what are you seeing? Are we getting more voice? What are the young women doing for the future's dialogue? And what do you foresee? What are we designing for? Just kind of would love your kind of vision of what you see ahead.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't even know what generation I'm in. Millennial, I guess. I don't. I think there's some people who there's some discourse that occurs that's really focused on the division of generational differences and stuff like that. There's also a lot of people who flow between those things and who openly, they'll say, I'm a millennial in a Gen Xer body kind of thing. And I think more and more of that is becoming the case. Mm-hmm. And there's, age is maybe less of a factor when it comes to working together, except for guidance. I think that one thing that probably hasn't changed through the ages, as I'm saying this, I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, is this actually true? I think what I'm trying to say is that I think as young women, we have a lot to gain and to learn from our predecessors. Because I think it's easy to grow up as a millennial, as someone who's been plugged into the internet and to the, you're inundated with information and you feel like your mind is filled with all the answers and all you need to do is just sort of Google it, right? And that's falling short of, I think, true knowledge sharing. Mm-hmm. I think, where Cecilia and I, our mutual friend with you, Denisa, where we met, we experienced a true sort of community-based model for sharing knowledge and growing together. What I mean by that is I was the youngest female in that whole program. So I think that's relevant to say here. The oldest female participant was in her 70s, and she was brilliant. And we worked together, we lived together. We existed in a very intimate space. And I learned from women who had done a lot of amazing things just by observing them, how they lived, how they carried themselves in interactions, what they took time for in the day, what they didn't take time for in the day, and those things I absorbed as a person. And I guess that respect is is something I hope that doesn't get lost in a generation like mine, which might be a bit narcissistic and airheaded sometimes.
But I think you really pointed out that the millennial generation has that access to the knowledge acquisition through the World Wide Web. You know, they're swift, they're fast moving. So it's just, it's a give and take. Absolutely. I learn a lot, even from my 10-year-old daughter. I mean, she's a totally other generation. Just the swiftness of decision making and the confidence. So it's really beautiful to witness.
But yeah, I wanted to say here, just because I think this is so important, like there's a real issue about burnout when things are really fast moving. Mm-hmm. And this has been one of my biggest life lessons in the past few years, is before you do anything else, you need to be a functioning, healthy, grounded human. And in a space like this, you know, you're thinking about climate change, you want to create impact in this abstract way, and you have this worldview, and you can become very easily anxious, you know, riddled with an overactive mind. And those things, you know, like if you push them aside, they will come back 10x with 10x of the force, and they will halt you in your tracks. And I think in a world where being distracted is the easiest part of your day, finding, you know, inspiration for discipline and for your own development, like spiritually or as a person, is so critical, because I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have mentors in that area of my life, mm-hmm. like my mother, like other women. So I just think that you can't forget about yourself and get lost in the world's problems, because you're not going to make it very far.
What do you do for self-care? What do you do for your bliss?
Well, I think number one is I like write things down, sort of journaling, sort of poetry, sort of like writing different things. I also just love to be in nature. So that's definitely my self-bliss, I guess. And I just like, you know, free movement and cooking and just things that I'm like a, you know, an artist. What's the expression? Like I'm a closeted artist, you know? So before I was an environmental scientist, I was a drama geek. So like I need some creativity in my life. So that's all I wanted to say there about the whole.
That's really important, and it's interesting, the synchrony of how we meet is that's how I intersect with your world, right? Through my work with women around bliss and medicine, and you, a young woman coming in saying even young women are burning out. It's not just the women with the, you know, burnt out adrenals in their 40s that they've had kids. It's really women who are bombarded with all of this constant pressure of consuming and creating knowledge and creating innovation. Yes, it's a speed we're not designed for as bodies, are we?
Yeah, I guess not. That's cool to hear you say that as a physician, you know, like that's comforting to know that's the case. You know, it's not that you're just falling behind. We're just not, our biological makeup isn't like meant for this kind of.
And you know, I had a great conversation with the head of the Neurohacker Collective, and I was asking him, you know, do you have a really great women's line? You know, this is about biohacking supplements and the optimization of the brain chemistry and so on. And he said to me, you know, interestingly, Denise, women are not our main client base. Women are doing this kind of biohacking like guys. And guys are really taking themselves seriously with respect to high level of performance, physiologically and mental wise. The women aren't like buying our products.
Yeah.
So that was interesting to hear, is that we're kind of still not taking care of ourselves as powerfully as we should, given the pressures on us, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
This is why I'm working so hard in the, you know, feminine high performance. It's about inner glow, and it's about the bliss, and it's about, nourishing the erotic soul of the woman that is so highly creative. So it's so interesting what we're going to see in the future. What do you foresee in your work, in your area, in your future? What are you going to be creating around this whole concept of science, environmentalism, you as a woman, what you see? I mean, are women having enough voices in the futures movement?
Yeah, that's, thank you for the question. What I'll be creating in the very near future is more of this, so more of our current project. Do I think women have voice? I think that especially in the in the people referred to as a continent and African countries, women have, in pockets of this space and the environmental development space, women are the powerhouses. They're the visionaries, they're the leaders, and it's incredible to see how sharp the contrast is between perceptions of this sector from certain North American, nonprofits or other types of communities, and what's actually going on the ground. When you actually meet people and you take a moment and you just listen to what they're doing, you listen to their stories, you see what communities they're a part of, it paints a very different picture for you very quickly. A good example of this is when I mentioned my co-founder Beth was running her very successful water filtration business. One of her key points of contact in each community for distributing the water filters were women's groups. And they were the decision makers in those communities. They would meet regularly as the heads of household, and they would, be accountable for deciding big things in their communities. And it was through them that she distributed these very important water filters. And it's examples like that where there's really matriarchal roots in a lot of these societies. There's also societies, of course, which, old sort of archaic ideologies and hierarchies are in place, of course, but there's also places where, the female-led leadership has always been at the forefront, and we have a lot to learn from that. We have a lot to be humble for in global North or Western societies where there's sort of third wave feminism. We have a lot of history to absorb, I think, before we start some of the more radical pieces around feminism, I think, is harder to relate to when you're working in a space that has these deep roots of female leadership, if that makes sense. So that's something that I've really, that's really impacted my perspective in the last year in terms of women plus environment plus impact, or, impact focused feminism. Those are sort of my thoughts. And where I think we're going, I don't know. There's so many ways to look at this. I feel like it's hard to be conclusive because the world is just becoming so connected that movements are transpiring, they're coalescing, they're becoming more, like they're crossing over. It's like, it's almost a globalization of cultures occurring as well as a material globalization. So in the way I grew up, from probably age 15, 16, I also went to an art school in a city, so just take that as context. Gender, sexuality, feminism were all things that were very much a part of our coming of age. It was very much a part of our society. It's part of the music we listen to, the fashion that we relate to, and a lot of it's becoming more fluid. So, I don't know if your 10-year-old daughter has Instagram yet, but if she ever does get that stuff, you'll see everything in terms of beauty and classic feminism, feminist things like fashion and all the whatever, cultural things. They're just becoming more fluid between cisgendered men and women, and it's kind of moving back and forth. So I think genders is becoming increasingly more important in the workplace and in stuff like that. But I think in our culture, at least as someone in their like 20s, I don't know, my outlook is that it's a lot more fluid, and places where people can afford to be openly like that are seeing a lot more of that expression. So yeah, that's
and in the area, just my last question, in the area of innovation and futurism and singularity, and what you experienced at that summer program and so on, do you feel there's enough women creating these innovations? Is their voice powerful enough? What kind of a voice do we? What do we have to add to the futures dialogue as women? What do you?
Yeah, I think that's. This is something we talked about throughout the summer, so you're spot on. Our program specifically had parity, if not, I think one more woman of the 90.
Huh.
So we were 51% represented. So that was very encouraging, and it was intentional. In Silicon Valley overall, definitely the culture is falling behind, in a lot of ways when it comes to that. So we were in this bubble, this kind of idealistic bubble, within the bigger bubble of Silicon Valley. So we had a very different experience behind closed doors at NASA. I think there's a lot more opportunity for women's voices in discussing and building the future of our world. And not just women's voices, it's voices of people who don't have the same amount of votes with their dollar. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the biggest distinction, beyond a gender difference, like a gender divide, it's the divide between the super haves, the haves, and the have-nots. And so that's actually, yeah.
So we need to really support women's prosperity if we want to hear their voice a little louder. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And advocate for people who don't have access to even, being part of the conversation.
Advocation. And this is very exciting. I can't wait to see what you continue creating. To vote for you, I have the site up here, and basically it's a really quick vote at the bottom of the page. You choose your gal. And how come it's just women here? Is there a reason why?
No, it's just so there's 7 regions. There's North America, East Asia, you'll see them. And in the North American finalist, lo and behold, it was just women. So
there's girls in there. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And they're all amazing.
Yes.
They're amazing things. So definitely check them out. And if you feel like voting, please do so. And make sure you confirm. The only way your vote counts is if you open up the email sent to your spam and you click on the confirmation link. Otherwise, it won't count, unfortunately.
Very good. Until June 25th. Afterwards, just look up Majik Water and continue following up this beautiful project. Keep in touch with us. And I'm just going to stop sharing our screen. So great to have this dialogue. I really wish you tremendous success, and I'm here to support your bliss. So absolutely do,
I feel like I want a podcast with you so I can learn about you now and ask you questions.
Let's do that. Totally. Okay, my love, listen, good luck. And I'm so proud of what you're creating, and what an honor to know you.
Thank you very much, Denisa. Thank you so much for having me and my team, which is behind me, but you can't see them. We really appreciate it. So
thank you. Thank you so much for doing everything you girls are doing. Ciao. Until next time.
Bye.